The church provided us food, hygiene kits, and clothing.
Offering faith, hope, and caring. Hear how LDS Humanitarian Services is reaching out worldwide, how simple gestures in Salt Lake City are blessing lives around the globe.
I don't look like a football player. I'm short, I'm small, and so I fly under the radar more times than not.
But his strong work ethic made this LDS player a superstar. Ben Cahoon shares his love of the gospel both on and off the playing field.
If it were not for the gospel, I would be dead.
Treating addictions through gospel-centered solutions, finding healing through the atonement. That's all today on Mormon Times. Good morning, and thanks for joining us today on Mormon Times. I'm Kathy Aiken. Almost daily, we hear news about disasters happening all around the world, whether it's earthquakes, floods, famine, even war. It seems no matter where tragedy happens, the church is one of the first to respond with aid in a major disaster situation. In Sierra Leone, this aid has offered both healing and hope.
So the war broke out in Liberia December 24th, 1989. During the war, we had no hope. Rebels were killing civilians. There was no food. People were dying in the street, even for us to eat. A single meal a day, we can't get it.
I lost my whole family in the war, my parents and my siblings.
During the war, it was difficult for us in Sierra Leone.
At one time, I tried. I got about 2 quarts of bulgur wheat. We could not even sustain us. My daughter was eating that food. She finished it. While I tried to lick inside the plate fell down from her. I shed tears. That was the most horrible time.
The church provided us food, hygiene kits, and clothing.
But with the help of the church's aid, people were able to feed their families. And I remember families getting a box containing everything the church sent was a blessing for the life of that family for many days.
During the war, this blanket kept us warm, me and my children. And so I've decided to keep it as a remembrance. So whenever I have important visitors, this is what I will show to them, that I'm not finished. I'm still alive.
When homes were burned down, people were living in the chapel during that time. We used the blankets to lie down on the floor of the church.
Latter-day Saints was the only church at that time that never pulled out of this town. Never pulled out of this town.
That faith, that belief, that hope was within us. Why? Because of this humanitarian gesture that was afforded us. If I could speak to the people who made this possible, I would want to tell them thanks. I want to appreciate them.
If I would talk to the people that put these things together, is to tell them whenever they do these things, let them don't think they are doing it in vain. That they should know that their time and their efforts do not go in vain, that many lives will be blessed, because I know how each of these things bless the lives of me and my people in those times of need. It helps me feel like my life has a meaning, to know that we're all in this earth, in this world, to bless each other's lives. It gives me a feeling of gratitude to belong to this organization that considers everybody in the world as children of God.
What an inspiring inspiring story of how the church is there in time of need. And Peter Evans from the Church Humanitarian Services is here now to talk about some of the work the church has done. Give us a little background about the church in Sierra Leone today.
Well, it's interesting. The church started in the 1980s. And by 1990 in Bo, which is where we've just watched, the church had a branch and 2 small branches, 3 branches in the city. And Mustafa Touré, who we saw was the branch president watching over the saints, they finally felt that they had a foothold in the city. And in January 1991, the saints received through the mission president a letter from President Ezra Taft Benson, which asked them to abandon the buildings that they'd been meeting in and to go back home and meet as saints in their families, to worship as families. And it was a great disappointment to the church. They felt like they finally had a toehold. They felt like they finally were making progress and were recognized, but they went with faith. Some members, it was a very difficult decision for them, but they went back home. And during the war, which broke out in March of 1991, the rebels targeted church buildings. Many, many congregations, not of our faith, of other faiths, were targeted during the war, and it was very challenging for them. It was a very easy way to kill people. They were either machine gunned or they would lock the buildings from the outside. They would burn the buildings down. But the saints who had followed the counsel of the prophet were safe. They were safe at home, and they never died.
Wow. So that was a major turning point for the church then.
Oh, it was a huge turning point for them. And they, to this day, have this sense of how important it is to follow a prophet, what it means to take counsel even if it didn't make sense to them and if they didn't like it. And they live with tremendous faith there.
Did the saints back there, did they feel isolated, or did they feel a connection with those back here?
It was very touching. They were very isolated geographically, of course, and the war isolated them. It was very hard even for them to see each other. But the mission president would come into the country literally with cash in his pocket, fast offerings that had been paid by faithful Latter-day Saints here in America. And no member of the church died of starvation during the war. Food was available, but nobody could afford it. But the members of the church had food because of the mission president and fast offerings. And the saints also, they had blankets, they had hygiene kits, they had clothing, things that seemed very pedestrian to us, but that were real lifesavers for them there that came here from church headquarters.
Well, tell us about some of the other humanitarian work that the church is doing in Sierra Leone.
We were actually there with a film crew, and the church was installing another 100 wells in remote rural areas in Sierra Leone. We have members who live in those areas. We have branches that are there now. But the wells are we've now put in 300 wells. A well can sustain about 1,000 people. We also have done a lot of wheelchair training, worked with therapists and with hospitals and with physicians and with others who can help provide appropriately fitted wheelchairs to people given their needs. And we've trained them in Sierra Leone, the people with our wheelchair initiative, to actually build their own wheelchairs there. So they can take care of them, they can build them, they can maintain them. The challenge with a wheelchair in many, many rural places is that when they're broken, there's nothing they can do.
Right.
But here, these wheelchairs are made on site. You can see the fun that they're having with it, and they can take care of them, they can maintain them and service them.
Peter Evans, thank you so much for sharing this inspiring story. We know you have many more, so we hope you'll come back and share them with us in the future.
Kathy, we look forward to it.
Great,
Thanks,
thanks, Peter. Well, up next, if you know someone struggling with addiction, please have them watch our next story.
I knew if I didn't get the God thing, I was dead. I had doctors telling me I wasn't going to live to see 30.
Meet 2 brothers who overcame their serious addictions thanks to the healing power of the gospel of Jesus Christ.